to say goodbye at the end. A new way to continue as we begin again. Say goodbye at the end. A new way to continue as we begin again. Stay calm. Stay calm. Stay calm. Stay calm.
Oh, there we go. Mike is no longer muted. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ghastly Statements from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch, back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast. Every other week, we have what we call a GX show, or a Gamer's Experience show, where we talk about the games that we've played, recount our PickZ PlayZ assignment. That is our homework assignment that goes out to all of the cast, requiring us to play games of a certain type and around a certain theme. We gather up for the GX show and report back on that experience. And we also spend the rest of the time then talking about the other games that we played. In the weeks in between, we do what we call a deep dive, which is a focus on gaming news and trends within the industry, societal influences, cultural influences, impacts on game design, and the evolution of the art. Tonight is a GX show, so we're going to be talking about the games that we've been playing. I argue maybe it's the show that the other hosts enjoy the most. I'm kind of partial to the deep dive, but tonight we're going to be going with the GX show. I have with me 25% of the cast of co-hosts on the E2KG network. Osiris Prime, how you doing, Osiris Prime?
I'm doing good. I'm coming from the E2KG network control center right now, as you can see.
Very good, very good. The agenda. I forgot this other thing that's on my screen besides just OBS. Yes. The good old PickZ PlayZ assignment. September 8th, 2020 saw the release of Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning, a solid action RPG that was plagued by controversy, lawsuits, and studio closures. In spite of all that, THQ Nordic is re-releasing it. It's kind of it was originally THQ that released it. It is now THQ Nordic, which are actually two separate companies in the instances of history of the games industry, but we'll do that another night. Is re-releasing it with a remaster. It has new DLC on the way in 2021. With the coming launch of the next generation of consoles, please revisit a title from the last generation, Generation 7, the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii U. The 360, PS3, and Wii/Wii U. The Wii U was one that I think straddled generations, technically, between 7 and 8. Between 6 and 7. I'm sorry, Generation 6. Wait, Generation 7. Generation 7, yes. And the Wii U, I think, straddled between 7 and 8, I think. Right?
This is 8?
This is 8. The Switch came
No,
out
I
in
mean-
8. But 8 was half Wii U and half Switch. Wii
Well,
U
that's
was
true,
the
yeah.
one that
Yeah.
straddled the 2 and 3. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That was re-released on current generation hardware. Was it worthy of a reissue? Did anything change? Or was it... Or was anything added to the reissue? Is it worth preserving or just a cash grab? I'm a little confused tonight. It's been a long time.
Oh,
it
man.
hasn't really been a long time. I was just on last week. Last week, it had been a long
It's been a while for GX show. Maybe.
Yes, now we're back on. Prime, I'm going to let you start this off tonight and talk to us about your experience and what you chose to play.
Yes, I chose Red Faction Guerilla, which is actually coming from THQ Nordic also. At least they published it. Developed the ReMARStered edition. It was developed by Keiko Games for this current generation. I'm sure that's how you say it. I played it on the Switch. I was actually going to try to play it on the Xbox One also, but I didn't get a chance to. But I kind of started playing it on Xbox One when the ReMARStered edition first came out, so I can kind of remember what that is. And they're basically the same game. The Xbox One version obviously has a little bit better graphics, I think. The Switch version actually does look pretty good, I gotta admit. When I start playing it again, I was like, and I played it on the handheld version and then on my monitor here that I'm using now, and it looks actually really good on both versions. So I was kind of surprised that it played so well. It looks so good. Um, was it worthy of a remaster? I would say yes, just because it's just kind of a fun title to play. It doesn't really add anything other than graphically. It does have all the DLC. Like if I don't think I picked any of the DLC up when it originally came out on the 360. So that was kind of nice to have that. But other than that, it's just just graphic kind of overhaul, and that's pretty much it. Um, the one thing I wish they would have fixed on there was the driving, because the driving isn't the best in the world. It's a little too slippery for my taste. You kind of slip and slide around. There's a little bit of a variance between the vehicles, but still, you always kind of have that kind of slidey kind of feel. So, but otherwise, you got the destruction like you did before. On the Switch, I haven't seen any slowdown or hiccups or anything, like when there's everything exploding and there's people, you got the enemies and you got the people helping you on the resistance side, and everything's like running around and there's vehicles flying all over the place. So it was running pretty well. So I was actually kind of surprised on that too. But I mean, it is a kind of an older game, so I guess even the Switch is able to handle it. So, but like I said, other than that, I mean, there wasn't anything um, like added on like ammo or anything like that. So, but I think all games probably, well, I would say all games. I'll say most games are worthy of preserving. Maybe not all games out there, but yeah, this one definitely was, because I always had fun with this game. This is kind of just like a Just Cause kind of a game where you kind of just jump in there, you do some missions. Um, there's kind of fetch missions. There's hey, bring this vehicle, excuse me, to this point, to a safe house or something. Excuse me. You got destruction missions, you got all kinds of other little side missions you can do. So there's a good variance of things to do. So I was actually pleasantly surprised on the Switch port of this. So I definitely recommend this one if you have never tried it before, or if you have, go back to it. It's just as fun.
Now, you've played Remastered before on Xbox, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
One. Yep.
So this was a additional run, a refresh run for you on a different platform on Switch, right?
Yeah, on the Switch. Yeah. Maybe. I'm trying to figure out. I don't remember exactly what the time wise, like between the Xbox One version and this one. I think it might have only been a few months. So.
Yeah, I can't.
I think this came out maybe on the spring in the Xbox, maybe early in the year, and then like maybe fall or like the end of summer it came out for the Switch. This was actually last year, I believe. So.
Okay. Yeah. Now I've played it also on PC, and so to me it's very much a you talked about the driving a little bit. It's very much to me it's built a lot in the Grand Theft Auto mode. It feels kind of like Grand Theft Auto on Mars to a certain extent. And then
They're arcadey.
Yeah, and then Yeah, and then I would feel the same way. It's with the vehicular physics. It's and Prime. I can't type while I'm talking, so it looks like your video has frozen up, but your audio is still good. So yeah, but it's a lot like Grand Theft Auto, like GTA on Mars. It's got wonky kind of driving physics. On PC, ReMARStered is, and I think it was called ReMARStered because it's not. I don't think it's entirely just a remake. I think they went in and tweaked maybe some design things. I can't remember exactly, but it is a really fun game. It gives you a ton of different activities to do. Some of it's formulaic, and things you've seen before. Like you have an initial base, which kind of feels like your apartment or whatever in GTA, and a place where you come back and drop vehicles off and restock all your arms and all that kind of stuff. But the only thing, I guess, the one thing that was wonky about my experience when I played through it a lot, and I come from the background of I played the original Red Faction. Also on PC. I don't think it wasn't the original wasn't even on console, or maybe it came to console later, as like a later release, back in the days where things didn't like automatically port over to other consoles. And a lot of people didn't play it on console, but in with Red Faction 2, that came to consoles, I think, day and date, and I fell off from the series when it moved from PC to consoles. But on PC, at least, like I said, it scales to 4K, so it's pretty visually impressive. And we talked about it a little bit last year when I played it, and one of the things I mentioned was how, it's amazing when you really go back and look at releases and kind of open game design and what has now become kind of the open world panache in the gaming industry, which is almost kind of a genre of its own, that open world third person action adventure. A lot of those building blocks were put in place with the design of Red Faction Guerilla. Red Faction Guerilla. I like to say Red Faction 2. But yeah, the initial laydown of kind of a lot of those designs, and the first time they were really all brought together, to me, is kind of present in Red Faction Guerilla. And I don't think it gets credit for that in most discussions.
Yeah, there was one other thing that it's a little weird when I'm doing the shooting and the aiming. I kind of wished, because and this is I'm kind of surprised I didn't put this in there, but there's no motion control in the aiming at all. So like if you play Breath of the Wild or something, when you got your bow out and you kind of zoomed in, you can kind of like move around with the controller and kind of aim a little bit more precisely. You can't do that here, and I know a lot of other games do that too, but I was kind of surprised. It would have helped a lot, just because. And I think I've mentioned this before, but for some reason with third person gaming, it's hard for me to aim.
No, I don't think
first,
you're alone.
yeah,
It's
first,
it's less. It feels like there's less tightness between like what you're doing versus what's actually going on.
yeah, and a lot of times I lose the reticle on
Yeah.
my screen, so it's just like I'm just like starting to go panic,
Right.
and I'm like just shooting everywhere.
Right.
So it's just a lot easier in first person.
Yeah.
But I kind of wish, other than those two things, I kind of wish they would have done something with those. But yeah, I was just kind of surprised they didn't put the motion control in there, because that would have helped.
Is there no option to snap to first person view? Because I thought there was on PC. I could be wrong.
I don't think so, unless there's like a mod or something maybe on PC. But I've never seen anything to switch to a first person mode in Guerilla. So
I don't know. Anything else special or unique about your experience?
no. Yeah, I think overall maybe this is probably kind of a cash grab. I mean, if you want to be honest about it, I mean, it looks pretty. They might have tightened up some things here and there, but I mean, it's pretty much the same game though. There's nothing new. So.
Right. So in terms of the remaster experience, where a large part of the library and a large part of the dependency on the enjoyment of the new consoles as they launch is going to be on their back catalog. And some select number of titles are going to be chosen to kind of be refreshed and upgraded. So, for instance, in this week's controversy, the upgrade to Spider-Man on the PlayStation 5. This is a game that's only a year old. It's going to get a fresh coat of paint on it. It's going to get new visuals. If we were doing a console launch, would this be a title that you would feel good about it being in that launch lineup. Like if this were in the Switch's launch lineup, would it be worthy of that reissue and to be part of that kind of that part of the catalog?
Yeah, I mean, if it was a Switch remaster, I think so. I think if it was like an Xbox One, I don't think so. It was kind of close, when the Xbox first came out and when the original 360 version came out. I probably would have been like, "Ah, I don't know why are they doing this already." But I think if it was a Switch one, it probably would have been, yeah, I definitely would have jumped on this one. Um, maybe that's discussion for another time though. As far as like should remasters, kind of be on a lineup. And I know that's not where you're going, um, but yeah, I'll just answer the question as yeah, I definitely would have bought this if it was a Switch, just because Switch was kind of lean, at least for me. Uh, well, and for me, actually, I kind of got it a few months later, maybe like 5 or 6 months later. So there's a little bit more that was out at that point. But if I had got it at launch, yeah, definitely this would have been up there with a must buy.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely in the discussion because I mean, my Switch lineup is not the typical Switch lineup. It's not. It's 80-90% formulated. Composed of technically remasters, reissues, re-releases, right, of games that had appeared on other platforms before. Because I don't play a lot of the first party Nintendo titles. It's actually I've been meaning to take a picture of it. It's actually pretty shocking if you look at my like Nintendo Switch, the library page of like all of your games. Like I don't have kind of the typical, Nintendo titles in there. Like I have Yoshi and I have this generation's Yoshi, and I have Mario Kart, Super Mario Odyssey, and Zelda, and that's 4 titles right out of like 30 something games that I've purchased for the Switch. So that's not a ton. Hey, I am gonna go ahead and start talking a little bit about my smattering of games that I played. I didn't complete the assignment to the letter of the law. I kind of tried to meet its spirit and intent. There were a few things that were going on in the studio as I contended with this assignment. One of those is that I'm not sure if you guys remember, but I had a PC. I guess it was one of my primary gaming PCs, and it had a short in it, and it just started kind of not turning on. And I replaced that PC with a partial new build, salvaged parts out of that old PC. In the course of salvaging parts out of that old PC, I found the short. So I just finished the salvage job, built the new PC, got that into place. A couple months later, I came back to the old PC, figured I'd found the short, repopulated it with other parts that I had salvaged, and put it back online, and was using it as like a backup. But in the last couple weeks, as this assignment was coming down, it started doing the not turning on thing again and representing the same behavior as the short. So I lost a PC. I kind of rejiggered the whole studio around, that machine coming out. And so I had several changes going on that I had to contend with and kind of re-racked and stacked kind of what I was planning on gaming. So this first one, so what I did basically is I played a lot of games on PC that were titles that released on Generation 7, or concurrently with Generation 7, have been re-released, and in their re-release have come to some PC kind of platforms, as well as next-gen hardware. And they're, playable on next-gen hardware either as, through backwards compatibility, or they were actually re-released. First of those is Hitman. Hitman has actually shown up on the Epic Games Store as a re-release. It was free for a period of time, and it was done to bring attention to the fact that Hitman 3 is coming to the Epic Games Store as an exclusive title. So I played Hitman. All that being said, I didn't play Hitman on PC from the Epic Games Store. I actually played it on Stadia because my dog unfortunately has been diagnosed with cancer, and so he had major surgery yesterday, and really can only be up on the main level of the house. So I was not able to camp out down here in the game room last night. I had to be up there with him, so I kind of started looking at my alternative means of porting gaming to play upstairs. And so I charged up my Stadia controller and played it for the first time on my Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. So that was a neat experience. Super huge screen, almost kind of like playing on a TV. Not quite. And I didn't have great ergonomics when I sat down and played it. It was I didn't bring up a phone stand to put it on. I was sitting on our sectional couch, which is already kind of low to the ground. So the phone was flat, like on a cushion, and like it was just a whole thing. So I didn't. The important thing I think to realize with Hitman 2 is I am not a stealth gamer kind of person. I typically balk at something like a Splinter Cell or whatever, but I have played Hitman and I have enjoyed Hitman before, but you got to be in a certain mindset to play Hitman, and you really have to be in a mindset for patience. Like, you can't rush a mission. But basically what I did, and I do this sometimes when I play Hitman because I'm short of patience, I kind of ran around and deliberately did things to break the mission just so I would, instead of doing one run on a map and trying to go slow and get it right, I figured, well, I'll just do 5 fast runs on a map and screw up 4 of them, and then hopefully by the 5th one I'll have figured it out. So I had some good time playing that. That run on Stadia, the controller works wirelessly, so you don't have to connect it up via a wire anymore. I'm trying to think what else worked well on Stadia. I mean, it played on a Samsung phone, so obviously that works on a newer Samsung phone. That part of it is working. It's no longer simply locked to like the Google Pixel and some other things.
So do you do you still have a subscription to Stadia, or is this just the free version?
I do. No, I still have a subscription. But I tell you, one of the things that I've done in the last week, and it kind of, I had been going through my catalog of what I had access to, and like on Stadia Pro, in terms of games you've gotten, for free. I mean, there's that I've claimed, but I just hadn't looked at them in a long time. There's Panzer Dragoon, which is one of my favorite games from the Sega Saturn era. That's been re-released on PC. Hitman, and I also didn't realize that initially just Metro Exodus came to Stadia, and then Metro 2033 came to Stadia, and now Metro Redux and Metro Last Light are on Stadia. So the entire Metro series is on Stadia Pro, and so if you have a subscription, you have access to that entire trilogy, for free as a free game that's in your catalog. So I have a ton of stuff there to play through, for people who haven't played through those games before. But yeah, I had a good time with Hitman. I would say definitely worthy of a re-release. I think Hitman is one of those games that has kind of infinite replayability, because you can always go in and try a mission and do it a different way. And it's just always, I apologize, it's murder, obviously, but it's always just kind of hilarious, who you knock out, and who you disguise yourself as, and which disguises work, under which situations. And in both cases, the first mission, you have to take out 2 targets, and so I kind of snuck around on my last run, and got up to the second floor in a crewman in a tech crew disguise, went out an open window, shimmied up a plumbing pipe up to the top floor where I actually was the second target of the 2 was. With some bodyguards and henchmen, and I just walked up to her and stabbed her with a pair of scissors, and then, while everybody was shooting at me, I ran away and went over the ledge, and then climbed down all the way down to the first floor. That's where the first target actually was. He was in the vicinity. It's a big fashion show. He was in the vicinity of the first floor, but the alarms hadn't gotten down to the first floor yet, so they weren't like all swarming security and panicking. And I just walked up to him and just like shot him like right in the face, with everybody standing around. And then after that, everybody panicked and ran out of the venue, and I just ran into the thong of the crowd, and just ran for the main exit. So, again, infinite replayability. There's just tons of different ways to approach that game. So, definitely worthy of a re-release, like I said. I don't know that it needs upgraded visuals, but I don't know. I think it has, all the DLC that came with it is in there, so it was changed, and yeah, I think it's worth preserving. I think Hitman quietly is one of the more significant. I mean, it's definitely a significant release in kind of gaming history and recent history that has kind of shaped and had an impact on the industry. And there are some very staunch, like, religious fans about that game. So I had a good time playing that. Without getting into a ton of detail, because I think we're going to get a ton of detail about the other stuff, but I also played Trackmania. Maybe I'll get into a little detail about this. So Trackmania, I think the key thing to realize on the re-release. So Trackmania on the PC is a game that is Trackmania Nations, I think, which actually again came out I think in Gen 7 time frame, but Trackmania 2020 is essentially a re-release of that game, but it is monetized entirely differently. The physics model has been changed. The physics model, in my opinion, is much better. It gives a little more visceral feedback than in the past. The Trackmania cars, I've always felt that the Trackmania cars are very floaty, kind of the stunt car style game, but they're a little more grounded this time. Terrain and track surface definitely make a bigger difference. And I think this game, so Trackmania re-release on Gen 8 hardware, at least last year there was a Trackmania re-release, I forget what it's called, I think it's a subtitle, so that's there, and it came... Turbo, yes, Trackmania Turbo, okay. Yep. And it came, I think it was on PS Plus or Xbox Games with Gold, or both.
Yeah, I remember there was one of them that got released on there. I'm trying to look for... yeah, it was on definitely PlayStation and Xbox.
Okay.
Doesn't say yeah, I can't see if it was released there. But I remember there was one that was released on Game Pass.
Okay. And this year, the weird thing in terms of how it's monetized is it's, I think, $30 for the year-long season pass. In what you get is you get access to all of the dev tracks, which come out on a monthly basis. There's a new track for each day, and then you get, and then it has a mod kit, right? You have access to the tools to build your own tracks in it, and what they do is the developers pick one track, I think, per day of the month. So basically on the first of the month they release all of their tracks, and those tracks come out like daily. But then in addition to that, there are community tracks that are selected, that are released, that then become part of that season pass. So you pay so once they pick it and they add it to the collection, you have access to that for the whole year. Next year, or a year after my purchase, it's an annual subscription essentially. And then, so I will retain access to everything that I've gotten this year. So there'll be, 360 first-party tracks and 360 like community created tracks that have been curated and made part of my collection. And I will always and forever have access to those. If I want the next year's follow-on content, then I pay another $30 annual fee. So I don't know how well that's going to work out for them. I've been pretty happy with what it's delivering this year so far. Like I said, a lot of good tracks. I love just kind of the battle rhythm that I play through Trackmania, which is, I go through every track, every stage of tracks once. And I say it's a track per day, but I think it's 25 stages actually, not a track per day, when the developers drop all their tracks for that month, for the month of September, for instance. So I'll play through all 25 tracks once, and I'll try and at least make sure I get at least a bronze medal for each, and then I go back and replay them to work on golds for each, and that puts me in a mode. So basically, the first time through, I just kind of blast through. I don't have to replay too many of the tracks because I typically get a bronze like the first time around. And then if I do have to replay them, it's like I just replay them. I recon the track the one time, and then I replay them the second time. But then once I'm doing that second loop back, that's where I might replay a track like 10 times, because I'm trying to like whittle like one fraction of a second right out of a time to get my gold or get my silver. So it's a good time. And Trackmania, I mean, as far as it re-releasing, it's this weird thing where just, if that's a thing for you, like, I guess that's my like Nintendo first party title. Like it keeps coming back, but there's so many tracks. I never feel like, oh yeah, I remember this track. You know, it's just, you know, do you remember that model and that's in that progression model and kind of how that season, if you will, was set up. It's because, you know, and at the end of the day, you just get wrapped up into the kind of the nostalgia of the Trackmania cultural sphere, I guess I would call it. And yeah, I definitely feel like again, this is a PC thing. It's not on the consoles, so it's not exactly what the assignment was. But you know, am I happy with what I got for the $30 for this one? Yeah, absolutely. Right, $30 for that versus, and I think I'm pretty sure it's $30 for the season pass. I don't think it's $39.99. I think it's $30. But you know, getting that versus paying $60 for a full size game. I have way tons more content and can spend way more time. Again, if you're into if you're into racing at all, and if you're into that type of racing, so I'm pretty happy with it. Did anything change, or was it added to the reissue? The fact that it's a Trackmania Nations remake, I don't know, but then again, I'm like, well, they remake the thing so many times. They come out with so many different versions over time. I'm like, I don't really know that like a Trackmania Rainbow would have been like really super different than this version of Trackmania. So, I mean, it's fine. And I definitely think it's worth preserving. It kind of has its own kind of cult following of people who are really into it. And it's not free to play, but I think it's relatively low cost in comparison for all of the content that you get access to, is why it has such a big following.
Oh, I had a question. Now I forgot.
I was pausing to give you time.
I know. I was going to ask you something. I just totally forgot. Oh, is the driving like is it more arcadey then, or is it?
It's definitely more arcadey, but it has I guess to me, the big difference between this and Trackmanias in the past is it's always been a little more arcadey, but in the past I felt that the impact, that the result of impacting with anything was just entirely random. Like if you hit a bump in the road, or if you didn't quite have the speed that you needed to get through an inverted loop or something, like the end result of that was just radically chaotic, and you had no real expectation of like how a car was going to handle on a different surface. I feel like this time around it's much more repeatable and predictable. I feel like there's a defined physics model, and so as I go over each type of road surface, as I go through each type of stunt, when I go up on a wall or when I go into an inverted loop, I know what to expect. And if I make a mistake, this is the big thing. Like if I make a mistake, I feel like I know how to correct it. Whereas in the past, it was just like you're trying to get a gold, you're like 2 seconds off, you just rerun it 20 times and you hope that, one of those 20 times you get it right? Whereas now, and it's totally random on how you fix, the 2 seconds of time. But now I feel like, oh, no, I need to shave that corner a little tighter. Or, I need to actually slow down before I hit that bump. Because, going through that maximum speed, like, drives me into a wall that I can't see around the corner, right? Or something to that effect.
Is there multiplayer, and did you play any?
It is. I don't know that I've gotten into all the multiplayer. The multiplayer mode that I played, so it's always been time trial, and that's a thing that's a little difficult for some people to grasp. Again, but again, I feel like the number of dirt rally type style racing games that I play, games that are built around that World Rally Championship sports type, thoroughly prepared me for being locked into that time trial type of mode. I think so. In that multiplayer mode, what you get is you just get ghosts that aren't yours. So normally you see your own ghost, and so that's what you're racing against to try and get that eke out that extra second or 2 seconds of time. When you enable the multiplayer mode, you're racing against other people's ghosts, which again is good because it gives you it tells you where you are competitively and where you are time wise against a competing person on the leaderboard. But it's all kind of leaderboard multiplayer so far is what I've found or understand it to be.
They're kind of like Trials. That's how Trials is. Well, I mean, they have a regular multiplayer too, but they have just in the main game, even through this like the story mode, they
Right.
have the little ghost riders of whoever your friends are on that particular system. So that's actually that's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It works good. Yeah. So bad on me that I didn't quite scramble the agenda below. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about SpellBreak? Is that okay? So and with that, so that is the assignment. I also played Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition on PC, which I've mentioned before. Kind of rubbed me the wrong way on Switch because there's so much that you need to do, and there's no like effective tutorials and text. If you're sitting far back from the screen, maybe there's flyover text, but it's really too small for you to read. So I've just found with a lot of those games on Switch, which I like that they're on Switch so that you can take them with you on the go. But I find like I have to play them first on PC to understand the mechanics, and then once I understand the basics, then I can play it on Switch. Um, but pretty much that's it for PickZ PlayZ for this week. We'll go ahead and just sit back and relax a little bit and talk about the rest of our gamer experiences. So you want to talk a little bit about SpellBreak,
Yeah.
Prime?
Yeah, so the last time I was on the GX show, I had mentioned this a little bit. It had just come out on the Switch. This is a battle royal game, shockingly, but you're using magic instead of guns or any kind of melee or anything like that. At least for right now. Um, they've released a few updates. Actually, they just released an update recently. I think it was, I don't know if it was this week or maybe even over the weekend. It was kind of weird. I just kind of saw the drop on, I think it was a Reddit or the Reddit subreddit I read on it. And there's basically different, like, so you have different gauntlets that you use to use this magic. So you have fire, ice, toxic, which is like kind of a, gas cloud. Um, and you can a main one when you first start out, when you first go to start out the match. So that's always on your right hand, and you can flip that in the settings if you're a lefty. I guess I'm assuming that's why they did that. But then as you get into the game, you start playing. You can if you find other gauntlets, you can equip it onto your opposite hand that you didn't pick. So you can mix and match. So like I usually use, well, I like to use toxic and then lightning. So what you do is you throw down like the toxic cloud and you shoot it with lightning and it electrifies the whole thing. So I mean, and it doesn't stay on the screen like for a super long time, maybe a few seconds, but it does give it that little extra oomph. So you can do that with all the different powers that they're in the game, which is kind of nice because it it gives it a little bit of a strategy. And say like somebody has fire that they're trying to use against you. If you have ice, you can actually put the fire out. So that's kind of cool. There's actually that part of it too. So there's defensive and offensive things you can do with these magics. So it's actually
So is there
kind of
kind of
interesting.
a like a rock paper scissors system to it underneath? Is kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And then all the powers obviously can't be used with each other, so that's another thing. So that's kind of cool. And then on top of that, then there's like I guess you'd call it kind of a super ability, or maybe not even an ability. It's kind of for the most part, they're kind of defensive or kind of escape kind of moves that you can pick up. So you can fly normally in the game. You can only do it for a few seconds, before your stamina meter basically is what it is. Runs out, and you have to wait for it to refill. But there's another one where you can fly a lot faster and for a lot longer distance. And then as you upgrade that, you find different levels. There's common, uncommon, rare, legendary. Same thing like in most battle royale games. So and you can obviously once you get the highest legendary version of whatever power or like third, it's really like third tier power that you can use. You can actually use it twice, kind of pretty much in a row. So that's kind of cool and kind of broken if you can't find those because obviously I guess the one thing that I've been reading lately on the subreddit is the loot drops they're static, so they're not always changing. Which I don't know about that. That's kind of weird. So there's small, medium, and large chests.
But that kind
Those
of
chests are
that kind of just makes it old school, right? I mean, essentially, like when you go back to Quake or Unreal Tournament. I mean, that's how those games operated. In though, I mean,
yeah.
if you replace it with a loot box, that's the same as like a weapon respawn point.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, obviously, once you memorize that, I mean,
Well,
you're
right.
golden.
Yeah, that was the downside. Was like everybody knew where the rocket launcher was going to spawn, and so everybody would be all gathered around there, like shooting
Yeah,
it out, right, waiting for the thing to respawn. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And same thing like in Halo too. I mean, when you do that type of mode in Halo, where the weapon drops are all along the map. You know where they're going to be. They're static. But in a battle royale game, I think you know doing the dynamic version where it kind of changes at the very least. Like okay, they have the small, medium, large chests. Those always stay the same. Those are always there. But the loot inside should at least change at the very least. But that I guess right now that's not the case. Like I was saying, it was everything kind of just stays the way it is. So it kind of stinks. I guess I'm kind of I just kind of babied maybe from the other battle roller games. So
So let me
where they change.
So let me ask you. I mean, you bring up a good point. You play a lot of battle royale games. I play. I wouldn't say a ton, but I would say it's getting up to like 40%, and maybe not strictly battle royale, but just that persistent progression game as a service kind of game. Um, like what? How are you going about this? So I mean, why do you pick at SpellBreak? Is it because are you or as a new battle royale comes on, are you in that first wave of people to try it out because but as you're playing each one, you know 3 out of every 4 of those is going to be a dud, right? But you're trying to find that one that becomes like the next Apex Legends. Is that kind of
I guess for myself, yes, in a way, I don't care if it gets popular, like in the masses. And plus, this was something different. It's magic, and it's you're shooting fireballs and ice on the ground, which is the one kind of cool thing with the ice is when you throw it on the ground, it kind of shoots in front of you and spreads the ice, and it makes you can go faster when you're jumping on the ice and gliding through it, basically like skating. So that's kind of another cool thing. But yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I pretty much just try them all out, and then whatever, like you said, whatever sticks kind of stays there. Like I played Hyperscape when it came out. I've been kind of on and off playing Warzone. I mean, that's kind of just my Call of Duty roots, so I've always kind of stuck with those. But this one was, it was like something a little bit different. And I think who was on that show with me? I think it was DB the last time. He kind of mentioned if it was more Harry Potter, meets better, like Fortnite or something. And I think it's more of more of an avatar, kind of avatarish, just kind of the way, kind of it has that cartoony art style to it, and just kind of the magic that you have, the ice and almost like the 4 elements from Avatar, plus a few more. You got a few more there, so I think that's more leaning toward the Avatar side than maybe so much Harry Potter. I think you just said that because because it's kind of a magic thing, and they bring up magic in the
so?
actual description.
So what's the monetization like? What are the microtransactions like, and how do they stack up to like Fortnite and Destiny 2? Are they worthwhile, um, or not present, or just kind of how do they fit into that system?
Yes, so far they just have just a regular item shop in there where you can get like skins, just basically skins for your characters, or you get back blings basically, or like backpacks or whatever. You get little different colored trails for when you're actually kind of flying around the world, and actually when you first drop into the world, because that's a little, evidently it's different in this game. I've never seen that, different skins for each of those before, but they have those in there. There's no battle pass right now. I think they did mention that they're going to have one eventually, which actually is kind of surprising. Unlike something like Hyperscape, which day one it was like boom, it had item shop, and it had a battle pass like right away. Even like through the beta, I think, or I think it still is beta maybe, but um, they had it there right away. And they're all reasonably priced, pretty much the same as like a Fortnite or anything like that. You got your like $5 to $10 skins, just for regular, character skins, and it kind of goes down from there depending on what it is. They have, well, on this one too, which is kind of weird. They have like emblems and banners that you can switch out, and you can buy those too. You do get things from in game, and I guess that's actually another kind of thing that was surprising is the in game money you get through just playing. And since there's no battle pass, you're just kind of getting it. Like, so I mean, I have like almost, I think, 1,000 right now, I think, credits or whatever they call it in this game. So I mean, I've just been playing the regular game for the last, what's it been, probably like 3 weeks now. So I mean, that's pretty decent. I mean, I could buy a skin if I wanted to, but I just kind of been saving them up. Maybe I can, if they do get a battle pass, maybe I'll just use that to buy that battle pass with those points. So that'll be kind of nice. Um, but yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that. And something else I was gonna say now, I forgot again. Um, I don't know. Do you have any other questions?
No, no. So is it third person or first person?
It's third person. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it always seems like most of them are third person nowadays.
Right.
I don't know if that's like the Fortnite effect or what, but
Right.
uh,
And so, I mean, the new hotness right now, I guess, is Valorant. And I don't know if you've had a chance to play that, but from what you've seen, how does that stack up, to this?
uh, I actually, to be honest, I haven't really, I haven't seen that much of Valorant at all, other than just like static pictures on websites and stuff. So I haven't watched any video or anything. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
I can't compare those two right now. Although I see what you're going with that, because I think that's kind of more like superhero-ish.
Well, it's kind of
powers and stuff.
it's kind of a throwback. It's more of a. I mean, Valorant, I guess, is kind of techno fantasy. It's like it's got technology and kind of that fantasy RPG component to it. So I was just wondering, how it kind of stacked up against something that was at least partially similar to it.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything of it yet.
So do you learn new spells as you're going on?
Not right now. It's more just like you get a firepower and you get the firepower. You can, after so many and I don't know what they call it really. I guess the survival from the storm or whatever it's called in this game. I don't even know. Magical wall. You do get like an extra ability stacked on to whatever you're using, and sometimes that can play with what like that third ability that you get. Like there's an invisibility power you can get too, and if you happen to have the toxic power or toxic magic primary on your primary hand, it gives you like an extra buff of some kind. So there's that kind of strategy too, where the different powers can get buffed, or or extra powers or stuff like that. So it's kind of nice.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Hey, so I'm going to take this moment to read you our sponsor's message. No, seriously, since we don't monetize. I'm talking a little bit about Crusader Kings III on PC, which is another game I've been playing on PC. That game is available via Game Pass. So, yeah, I mean, quite honestly, it's one of those things where I'm like, if you have Game Pass Ultimate, like, why would you not play it?
Just the PC side.
I do not know if it's on Xbox. I don't know how this very much a turn-based strategy, kind of in the vein of Civ. And normally I would say I don't know how you play that effectively on consoles, but we all know Civ 6 is on consoles. So, I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure if Crusader Kings is as well.
I'll check that right now.
Okay. But obviously this is a very long-running, very venerable franchise. People go gaga crazy for Crusader Kings. There was lots of posts about how people were waiting and waiting and waiting with heavy anticipation for this game. I don't have that background, so I can't comment about from a nostalgic perspective. Does Crusader Kings III like trade on any of that past knowledge or nostalgia? I'm just not familiar with what's gone on before, but I can talk to you a little bit about what I've experienced about what's in there now. So there's a lot of differences. I mean, Crusader Kings is one of those things that to me again has a cult following that's very niche. The people who are into it are hardcore into it because you kind of have to be. So right there, I'll start with my comment on it. Crusader Kings. And I should also mention it's on Game Pass, but I did actually pay for this game because with my buying a couple games a month, if even if a game is on Game Pass, if all of its other parameters meant that it would have been the game that I would have bought, I feel like pay your developers, so I paid for it. Crusader Kings is very akin, and obviously you can kind of see how it has similarities to the Civilization series, but obviously whereas Civ goes from the very beginnings of man all the way up until man goes into outer space, Crusader Kings is much more tightly wrapped. There are two kind of scenario periods: 867 BC and 867 AD, I believe it is, and 1066 AD, which is I can't remember my high school history now, but is when I think Sir William landed on the shore in what eventually became the UK and started like the wars that really led to the unification of Great Britain. I think I have that correct. But Crusader Kings is around those two time periods. But what I really love is they have scenarios and they have things that if you choose to play them, you have to do. But what amazes me is that there's you kind of have to understand what to click on to get into it. But they essentially have a conquer the world kind of mode where it's just it's in the lower left hand corner. It's play as any character in 867 AD or play as any character in 1066 AD. It has much more factions than Civ does. So Civ kind of gives you like all these principal leaders that you kind of know and kind of have learned through high school history. And you don't really get thrown any like unexpected or unknown names. You kind of know all these personalities before. But with Crusader Kings, you get like the little nation that I'm playing is actually in Africa. It's actually I think it's Guara or something to that. It's an African like little thing, that's and they use terms that may not necessarily map in true in the cultural linguistics that were used at the time, but they just unify kind of everything under this single taxonomy. And so it's a duchy in Africa, and you're fighting through the wars of unification of and like that's amazing to me. So I didn't pick like one of these known personalities that I know like all the history about, but I'm like, no, let me play this little nation state down in Africa and see how that scenario unfolds. The one thing about Crusader Kings is there's tons of bells, whistles, levers, and knobs to like turn, pull on, and twist. And like you just my process through the game was I played the first night like an hour and a half, and I was like, just let me try and like figure this thing out and not play the tutorial. And like that didn't work, because there's a raise army mechanic that I didn't understand. So I kept building more and more troops, but then I was like, how do you mobilize these things and start walking them around? But I didn't realize, as is the case in ancient times, there's no standing professional army. Like everybody is like a farmer or a mason or has a job, and then when you ring the bell to raise the army, then everybody reports for duty, and so you kind of have to go through that to mobilize the army. So I played the first night for an hour and a half, didn't really get anywhere, learned a few things, figured things out. Then I played the tutorial for probably 2.5, 3 hours overall. Then started to learn the mechanics and understand how everything was put together. Then I probably played another 3 hours away from the tutorial, where I started to really figure things out and how to mobilize my armies. But, in what I love about it is, you're playing the game, the AI is playing the game also. And so it's often completely random and unpredictable how a game's going to unfold. One of the things that they talk about, that they say in the front is, there is no way, in stark contrast to Civ. Civ has its win conditions, right? As you start each game, you can win on it. You can have a diplomatic victory, an economic victory, a military victory. Crusader Kings, has its bumper sticker is there's no way to win Crusader Kings. There's just lots of different ways to experience the game. And I'm like, oh, I think I kind of like that. Like I don't have a defined thing that I'm trying to accomplish over time. I love games with family tree management. So you're responsible for marrying off kids and all that kind of thing. So just to talk about like my first like campaign experience as I started, I selected this little African nation. I was like, okay, this is one of like 3 areas. I'm going to try and build up my army and go attack the weaker one. And then once I have those 2 unified, then I'm going to raise a big enough army that I can take over the third. So my first objective is going to be, let's unify the duchy. These 3 areas that, somebody should have a legal claim to. So I'm building up my army. I'm one of, I think like 3 to 5 like brothers whose empire, the empire was all split up amongst the children. There's an older brother. He's in one of the 2 largest nation states up north. I'm doing my thing, trying to build my army so I can launch, my attack on and this takes like a couple years to put this all together, right? The older brother sends like an overwhelming size force down to raid me. Doesn't attack me outright, just like, you know, raids and pillages all throughout. So, but what that does is it prevents me from hitting the raise army button. So I'm like, I gotta sit there and I gotta like suffer through this and just wait. So I decide, okay, I'm gonna declare war on him while his troops are still down here raiding. So once I declare war on him, he gives up the raid, starts pulling his troops back. He's like, oh no, I gotta mobilize my people for war. I get engaged with him in a battle, and it's neat because as you engage in battles, it names it's like the Battle of Bamir, like it's the Battle of Babia, right? It's naming them as you go throughout, and you can see a historical timeline of how these things lay out. I lose the first war. The other thing is, it's when you lose or when you defeat an army, it's typically not, again, unlike Civ, people don't get routed down to the last soldier being killed. So there's always the potential for a reattack. So my army was defeated. They retreated to the other side of the map. He came down with a different force again, but by that time, when he was attacking that force, they were more experienced, their commander was more confident, and they were bivouacked in a set of hills. So he came down, I beat him that battle. He came down a second time. The second time, he just got completely destroyed. The third time he came down, I was raising a second army. They were on a different part of the map. I saw him coming down. I unified the two armies, and like just as he arrived, he's like, "Oh crap! There's two armies here." He completely got routed again. In the middle of all this, as I'm like I don't want war. This kind of happens in Civ 2. It's like I don't want to get into the military fight yet, but something happens and I do. The third brother, like, apparently has a tiff with my diplomatic chancellor and goes, hey, I don't really appreciate the behavior of your chancellor. You've made me angry. I'm lowering my opinion of you, and I'm just going to have a low opinion of you for 5 years. I'm like, great, man. Like, I don't need... And I'm thinking, I don't need this guy to tip the apple cart and go to war against me, too. So I go, why don't I arrange a marriage? So I arrange a marriage between my youngest daughter, who's actually my heir, and his heir, who's his son. My daughter is actually the older. She's 10. His kid's 4. So now I go, let's arrange this marriage between these two. His opinion of me is still low, but he gets moved into the ally relationship. So once that's all done, the next thing I do is when I see the older brother come down again start sending a force down, I call the other guy to war. He's got a low opinion of me. He goes, I got a low opinion of you, but we're kind of all going to be family, so of course I'll go to war with you. So now I have, like, my nation, his war forces, and the oldest brother, and I'm like, I'm going to completely flip this thing around. So it's a wonderful tale of just how complex and all these layers and, like, how you can lay out this grand strategy. And the one downside, and how you have this tapestry of an experience of, like, this is me living out Game of Thrones, right? Like, in my game space. The downside is that it's super complex, super heavy, all sorts of, different dynamics going on. It runs kind of in real time, so you hit play, and the dates of the month cycle, and they keep, like, cycling not in real time, but in a simulated time passing by. So it's not turn-based. And then, there are things that trigger that will cause the game to automatically pause, but a lot of times things will trigger, and if you're not watching it, the clock will keep running. So there's that. So it's just a super heavy game, in a world where I play things like EVE Online and other things that are super complex. It's hard to get into a game like that unless you're going to say, here, let me take, like, these next 3 weeks and dedicate to this game. And its learning curve and all my plotting and putting my grand strategies together. But yeah, I had a great time with it. So, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So it sounds like it's more grounded in reality than, right? It's just, it is these nations back from this time. It's not, like dragons and minotaurs coming out at you, right, and stuff like that.
I have not encountered where there's any fantastical element or magic or anything like that.
Deities or anything like that.
There's religions, and, like, people are crazy. People believe whatever they believe back in that time, and right. And things of that nature. But yeah, but it's very, to me, it's very grounded. It's very much like playing I was a huge, I'm a huge fan of period piece, television anyway, and movies. It feels very much like you're playing through the Tudors, but again, like with characters, all over the world, the known world at the time.
Okay. And more just kind of like text and menus than like a 3D, kind of like Civ, where there's actually a 3D representation of the players kind of moving around and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say that, but it's not. I mean, there's warfighting animations. When you go to battle, I will say it's not like it's not like the Total War series where there are these iterations like Rome and like gosh, what was I can't even remember the name of it, but Total War Shogun, I think it was. Where in Japan, where there is a grand strategy kind of turn-based component to the game, and then when you get into actual combat, it like zooms in and you run that like in real time, and you have to actually fight that battle out as a real-time strategy. So it doesn't have that, but I guess I would say just mechanically, like it doesn't, even though it's kind of semi-turn based, kind of real time. But doesn't have that RTS piece to it. By the same token, yes, it's a lot of text, but it also doesn't feel like Eve. Where like when I'm playing Eve, I love Eve, but Eve is just a spreadsheet heavy slog of like finding all the lore and understanding. Like I play Eve and I have the game open here. I have like a website with like a virtual star map over on the other thing, so I can plot like how I need to go to, like I'm figuring out how many jumps it is to get, what war faction is this, like it's not as, I go to fit out a ship and I have like spreadsheets and websites and tools all over the place to figure out how best to build the thing. It's not, it's very self-contained and grounded within itself. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff out there on the web to help, but like you don't have to resource hunt for little things of how to master every little piece of the game on websites and outside the game. It's very self-contained.
That's good. Yeah, that's not good when you got to like search and look at all these kind of different things. You mentioned before, like there's events that trigger, and then like if you're not paying attention, you said the clock keeps rolling. So that, I mean, does it just like it picks something for you, like a choice if you're supposed to make a choice, or?
No, it'll just leave that thing hanging out. So, like for instance,
It just stays there.
When that thing triggered about, one of the neighboring, I'll just call them nation states, even though they're one of the neighboring. There are names for all these territorial types, but I mean that's super complex, so I haven't memorized it. Yeah, there's one of the neighboring realms, that alert that popped up that said, "Hey, I'm dissatisfied with your chancellor. My opinion of you is lowered." There wasn't necessarily anything for me to do about that except acknowledge it. Responding to that and changing my strategy in terms of the approach of my relationship with that individual. That was something that I had to decide of my own initiative, and it was completely outside of the real time or semi-turn based structure of the game, right? So in that instance, the alert pops. There's a thing for you to basically do nothing but acknowledge it. But when that alert pops up, the clock is still running, right? So I saw that thing pop, and I am, because I'm a turn-based person at heart. That like even like when I played like Icewind Dale and Baldur's Gate and stuff, like I would go in and manually set it to like, those games are set to like run the clock all the time. You have to go in and manually select options that cause, like I would basically cause the thing to auto pause for everything. And so I'm kind of trained to look for that clock running, all the time. And so when things like that happen, at least right now for me, like I catch it. But yeah, if you can make the mistake of seeing alert pop and fixate on reading that and figure out what to do about that, and then not realize that the clock is still running.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Hey, so we are a little bit over time. I'm going to cede the rest of my time to you to talk about Northgard and Descenders.
Okay. Let me do Descenders real quick because that's probably the quicker one. So Descenders is I think I mentioned this too real quick on the last GX show. It's action cycling, like kind of mountain bike cycling, downhill biking game. So it's actually pretty fun. It's by this developer called Rage Squid, which I never heard of before.
Is this on Switch also?
No, not yet. It's supposed to be sometime this year. They said it's supposed to be on
Okay.
Switch. It's on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation right now.
Okay.
So
Yeah, there's some other downhill bike game that's on Switch.
yeah, I think there's something. Yeah, I think there's a couple on there.
Downhill Run
actually,
or something like that.
yeah, I saw it on Game Pass too. Actually, I picked it off on Game Pass, and actually, this is where I saw um, Descenders was on Game Pass. Fortunately, because my son wanted to play it, so I said, "Hey, let me take a look at Game Pass first." I was like, "Hey, there it is. Good." Not that it probably would have been super. I'm sure it would have been like 15-20 bucks or something, but so that's fine. But yeah, it was actually, and I think I mentioned this too last episode. He's actually the one that turned me onto this because he saw it on YouTube. Somebody playing on YouTube. So I guess you could kind of say I've been on like extreme sports kick. So I've been playing, the Tony Hawk um, remaster. Speaking of remasters of 1 and 2, having a great time with that. But he brought this one in, and yeah, it looked. I was like, oh man, what is this? Like the graphics aren't like super like detailed or polished or anything like that. And there's kind of bugs here and there, but it's just kind of a fun little jump in there and play. I don't know, maybe to be honest with you, I think I played it for like over an hour the other night because I was playing like the story mode, or it's kind of like a tournament mode, I suppose you could say, where you kind of there's a map and you start off obviously at one point and then it kind of like splinters off and you can kind of do different trails and stuff. But actually at least when you're doing the story mode, each run is actually procedurally generated, so it's always different each time you do it, which is kind of nice. And then along the way you get sponsors that kind of give you kind of a different kind of power up basically. So like one might give you like when you're trying to do like turns and stuff, it gives you more stability when you're doing that turn. Or if you're doing a lot of kind of hilly courses, or if there's a lot of hilly courses coming up, it'll actually just flatten them out, so it's just like a straight run. So it's kind of nice and kind of weird power to give somebody, I suppose. It is a video game though. But yeah, it's actually pretty cool. And then there's some user generated maps that you can do. A little weird because they're called seeds in here, and it's like I think it's like a, I don't know, 10 to 15
So
digit.
you're basically playing a two-wheel version of Trackmania.
I think so. Yeah. No, I think maybe I should go to Trackmania because, like I said, I played like over an hour of this game.
Yeah.
And it was like, so yeah, it was super fun. And another thing I like to do too is customize my character, so you can customize your character, your bike, and all that. So that's pretty cool too. So and then you unlock stuff as you play through the tournament mode or story mode. So another thing that's it's kind of, I guess, just kind of an online game, because even when you first load into the game, you're kind of just like the central hub area, and there's like only like I think 3 other people in there with you, which is it's kind of an indie developer, so maybe they couldn't put like like 50 or 20 people, maybe something like what was the Ubisoft game that they just announced? I can't remember now.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But
Yeah, it's the extreme sports kind of
yeah.
different, biking and all that, skiing and all that. So they probably have it, it's a smaller number. So then when each track you go into, even like through the tournament mode, the story mode, there's people in there too, so you can kind of see people, doing the runs and stuff, which is kind of cool. It kind of gives you that, that competitive edge if you want to try to beat something or somebody. So the one thing in the tournament mode, you get basically lives. So after I think you start off with 2, and then depending on if you do their bonus challenge for that run, you'll get another life. So that's kind of cool, and it kind of keeps you going. So once you all that runs out, you got to start back at the beginning of it. So it's actually kind of cool. I definitely suggest just trying to try it out, especially just on Game Pass. If you got it, give it a try. It's kind of a cool game.
So did you play Trials? I forget what last year's version of Trials was. Did you played the second one though, didn't you? Last year's was the third version.
Yeah, I think Fusion was the first one to come out this generation, and then there's I can't remember what this year or the newest one is. Yeah, but I played both of them.
So the newest one was Trials Rising. That's the one I played.
Rising.
So you played Fusion.
I played both actually. I played Rising too.
Okay. All right. How does this compare? I mean, so the weird thing is you mentioned that it's an indie studio. I wanted to ask, like, what's the graphical fidelity like? How does it compare to Trials Rising? One of the things is it's Rage Squid is the developer. they're so small that they don't even have a Wikipedia page at all.
No.
Their game does, but the developer doesn't. So I just kind of wanted to get a feel for having played Trials Rising and seeing what that graphical fidelity is like. How does Descenders compare?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, Trials Rising's like leaps and bounds above above Descenders as far as graphic quality, but I think they were probably going for more of like a kind of a kind of grassroots, like word of mouth kind of a game where, hey, you can jump in this game. Here, let me give you this seed. Like I was trying to mention before about this is a seed to a map. Try this map out, and it's like this weird map with like super loops and super jumps and just all kinds of craziness. So I think they were kind of going for more of that kind of a feel.
Yeah, but it's
Than
not. I mean, it's nothing to sleep on, right? I mean, it's a.
no,
I mean, it's not. It's not sprites. I mean, this is like a.
no, yeah, it's 3D. I mean, it's a fully rendered 3D game, graphical game. So
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
I guess this is kind of like a double A
yeah,
level
I would
game
say
or
double.
studio.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, nice.
Yeah, and you can kind of see the roughness of the game, just not even just graphically, just kind of the UI and stuff. Just I can't remember. I think it's during the tournament mode. Like I couldn't like quit out of it. I don't know if it was a tournament mode. There's another one called I think bike parks or something like that, where it's just like a I think it's community curated, kind of like Trackmania, community curated runs that they picked out from the community. Otherwise, there's other ones you can just you put the code in and you can just try it out. But I couldn't get out. Like I had to like go out of the game to quit out of that mode, which was kind of weird. So it's just like a little thing like that, which is not a huge deal. Like okay, it doesn't take that long to get into this game. So, but yeah, but no, I've been having tons of fun with this game. So. Uh, I'm kind of glad, and I think I mentioned this last time. I'm kind of glad that my son kind of stumbles upon these games like this because otherwise I probably would have gave it a second chance. Even on Game Pass, maybe I was like, it's kind of a bike game, like whatever, kind of even like that downhill one you were talking about before. Think I actually did try that one out at one point, and that one's a little bit different, but yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with this one so far. So if you got Game Pass, try it out. Very fun.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Of course, like I mentioned, Crusader Kings III is also on Game Pass. So, um,
Oh yeah, and that was just PC. I'm sorry, I forgot. I looked that up before. It's not on consoles right now.
Descenders isn't. Or Crusader Kings.
Crusaders.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, but it is on Game Pass Ultimate, right?
yes, yeah. Game Pass for PC. Yep. All right. So then my final game, Northgard, which I actually been playing quite a lot, or quite probably about a month now, maybe even a month and a half. I hadn't had a chance to talk about it too much. This is actually an RTS game from Shiro Games, which is another studio I'd never heard of. It's another independent studio. They're actually out of France. There's only a couple other games that I've seen. Darksburg, which I never heard of, and a couple of games from Evoland, which some kind of RPG, which I once again never heard of. But Northgard, this is a RTS, which right away I was like, oh, RTS, finally on the Switch. I mean, I think it's on other consoles and PC and stuff, but I saw that it was on the Switch. I was like, oh man, I've been waiting for something like to get on there. Like I like Civ and stuff like that, where it's kind of like the turn-based, but RTS is I think that's like one of the first games that got me onto PC gaming. Back when I used to play, like way back in the day, like it was like Red Alert and Yuri's Revenge and stuff like that. Red Alert 2. So I saw this and I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. It's a Viking themed game, which I guess kind of the end thing nowadays. Obviously, we have Assassin's Creed going the Viking motif.
Mhm.
But so you have your regular resource management. You can make your Vikings or your people farmers and warriors and sailors and lore master, which is kind of like a power you can kind of like a buff that you get after you level up that lore master every however many levels it is. You get you can make crop growing like 10% faster or something like that. So it gives you like buffs like that. But there's an added thing here where the weather actually plays into effect, where you have to get your food ready. You have to build it up. You can build like silos and stuff like that to build up your stuff, but you have to get that stuff ready because once winter hits, You don't make any more food, at least not from like farming. I think you can still do hunting maybe, and maybe even fishing depending on how the land is laid out. But everything gets like, kind of shrunk down. So you make sure you've brought all that up. So that was, I'm still getting used to that part because I'm not used to that. Like where there's like a third thing that you have to worry about besides, just the land. Like there's, animals and beasts that you have to fight. There's other, there's AI, and then you you actually play multiplayer too. I haven't done the multiplayer yet, but there's AI people you have to worry about. You can befriend them, or, obviously go to war with them if you want to. So, there's this whole, just that third thing just threw me for a loop because like the first time it happened, I had to go back like 2 saves. Like I always save 3 times, like 3 different saves, and thankfully you can do more than just 1 save here. So I had to go back to the very first save because I had like totally screwed up everything. So I had to go back and do the resource management a little bit better this time. And then the other thing too, so you can unlock so you start off obviously in one little section, and then I guess this kind of plays into the turn-based kind of games where you have to unlock each section of the map, kind of like in turn-based games, because mostly like in other RTSs usually you just send somebody out and they'll unlock that area right away for you. But here it actually, you have to, once your scout kind of uncovers it, then you have to go into it, clear it out if there's like beasts or whatever, and then you have to what does it say? I think you have to lay a camp or something like that, I believe, before you can actually start doing anything on that piece of land. But also these pieces of land are different sizes, so they kind of restrict on what you can build. And I'm hoping when you do multiplayer that kind of goes away, because it's like, I have to, At first I was trying to do all these like training camps and war camps, so build up my army. But then the winter hit and I got screwed because I didn't have enough food. So then I had to go back, put these, all these different farming or like hunting or stuff, like I said, stuff like that to build up your food reserves. So there's that kind of layer to it too. So there's a lot going on, which I didn't realize at first, and I'm like, oh man. So there's been a bunch of times where I actually had to go back to previous saves because I kind of messed something up. So, and actually I'm probably gonna have to do that my next playthrough because once again I'm messing things up. So right now I'm just going through the story mode. So like I said, I haven't done any multiplayer stuff yet. And you can do multiplayer against basically just like skirmishes, either against AI or real people. So it'll be interesting when I actually do that to see how it plays out. Oop, I can't hear you right now.
Oh, sorry, hit the wrong button. So, of the 3 games that you talked about tonight, Northgard, Descenders, SpellBreak, and ReMARStered, which of those are you planning on spending more time with? I mean, some of these were kind of like experiments, like you just touched base in them, trying to see if they were worthwhile. But which of those 4 things just kind of really sticks with you, and is definitively something you're gonna spend some time with as the year goes on?
Definitely SpellBreak and Northgard. I'm gonna definitely kind of dive deeper into those ones. Descenders I'll still play, but I mean that's like I said, that's kind of yeah, I played like an hour of it, but it's more of, you can do just like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of that one too, kind of like a Rocket League or something. So something you could just jump in quick. But yeah, definitely SpellBreak and Northgard. I'll jump into more, and probably more so Northgard, just because I haven't played an RTS in a long time. So I want to jump back into it.
All right, man. Anything else we need to go over before we wrap things up for the night?
No, I don't. Not on my end. I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything else. I guess you talked a little bit about Eve.
Yeah. So yeah, no, nothing that I want to deep dive on. Like I said, the pertinent parts of Eve, as you mentioned, I think I brought up a little bit. I've also been playing some Destiny 2 on PC and some F1 2020 on Xbox One. I'm going to try and play some NHL 20 on Xbox One here tonight. Of course, as we go into these sessions on Xbox or PlayStation, we don't know if it may perhaps be the last time that we play a game on that piece of hardware. Then again, we could be on that same piece of hardware for another 12 months, right? We don't know with the way supplies are right now and the way they're handling pre-orders. Probably something that we will talk a bit about on next week's deep dive.
Real quick, I wanted to ask you about Trackmania real quick.
Yeah.
Were you just using controller for that, or I'm assuming you're not going to use the wheel and pedals for.
No, I've tried using a wheel of pedals in the past for Trackmania. It is not particularly effective. I need to
Is
get
it just too arcadey to use wheeled and pedal?
It's too demanding. You have too many instances where you have just wicked, crazy turns, and just some of the physics and gymnastics is just much easier to use a controller for that. I will say that is a game that I insist that when I do play, I use my Elite controller V2. So I do. That is something that typically, for games that still use a controller, I try and utilize each of my Xbox controllers in rotation. So I kind of keep the wear and tear the same and make them last as long as possible. But with some games that are that I do play with controller, they're in a lane where I go no. I always use the Elite controller V2 with that. Trackmania is one of those.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that with the controllers. I do that too. Like, I gotta use these.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 6 assets, right? There's no sense in using one. I mean, I guess you could use one until it breaks, but you have lots of equipment that tends to break if you don't use it. So better to get a little bit of use out of each one. So next, PickZ PlayZ assignments. Listen up, Swissguard and DBQ Hams. This is yours as well. We're experts, at least we're supposed to be, or is it that we claim to be? But we've been really hardware specific in our most recent discussions. Time to get back to games, because none of us are going to be able to get a next-gen console for a long while. Pick a game that you know pretty well and crank it up a notch by playing it some more, and spend some time researching and learning all that can be known about the studio that developed it. Research their history, learn or relearn all the ins and outs, and as always, report back. So I wrote this up and kind of crafted it around as I've listened to the last couple of episodes. Yeah, I will admit, I'm a hardware guy at heart. I could talk about that stuff all day because there's always some new little bit and piece of hardware coming out across the landscape. But for this podcast, I've just listened to the last couple weeks and we've really been hardware specific to a point where I worry that we've drifted off a little bit from games. So we kind of wanted to bring it back around and make sure that we spend some time. And this hits at a thing that I've mentioned before, that gamers don't know studios. And if you have a game that's kind of your favorite, you really ought to know and understand the people behind it. And so particularly if you play a franchise, right? So that's what this is around. Prime is going to dig into Bethesda, recently acquired by Microsoft for $7.5 billion. It's a boss move. Yeah, here's $7.5 billion. Just go buy Bethesda.
Not just Bethesda, but ZeniMax.
Yes, ZeniMax and all. Yeah, including picking up some of my favorite I love the Arcane Studios games. Doom Eternal is now a Microsoft game. Coming
to Game Pass soon.
Yes, yep.
Just today announced.
Right. So Prime is going to be playing Skyrim on Bethesda. Are you going to play that on the Switch?
Probably Switch, yeah.
Okay, all right. And I am going to be playing, and essentially, with mine, it can change, but I signed up right now to be playing Destiny 2 and do some research on Bungie. I actually knew about Bungie and was a fan of that studio before they were a Halo studio. So I'm actually going to be spending time going back and revisiting history that I had already learned once, but I haven't revisited in a long time. So I'm going to kind of bring that up to date with what I knew in the past. Next week is a deep dive episode on industry and on the industry, business, and news cycle. I'll be hosting you once again. Swissguard will be my co-star. And until then, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like and stream the games that you love. Once again, my name has been Agascally Stamus from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch, on behalf of my partner in crime, Osiris Prime, the other co-host on the E2KG Network. Good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.